Recovering Pessimist is the 18th episode of the first season of Everybody Loves Raymond. This is directed by Geoffrey Meyer, and there will be spoilers as I discuss what happens in this, so spoilers from now. I don't think this is necessarily the funniest episode, but it's definitely very thought-provoking, and ultimately I enjoyed it. It starts off actually very relatable with Ray and Debra in bed, and Ray is whinging because he needs to get up to go to the bathroom, but he's too comfortable and it's too far away. If you're a nighttime peer, you will relate to that. And it's just a nice way to start things off, not connected to the main narrative. And then we have the main narrative kicking in. Marie and Frank are about to leave just as Robert comes over. Robert has received an attendance award for not having a single day off work, which is adorable, but in true Everybody Loves Raymond style, Ray then does one better. Not that Ray intended it, and Ray's not actually happy about it, but Debra realises that they've received a letter that says that Ray is up for Sports Writer of the Year. And Ray's not happy about it because he doesn't want the fall after the high and then not losing it. If he gets excited about it and really wants this and then he doesn't win, that's going to be painful. Whereas if he doesn't allow himself to really care about it, he won't experience that sense of failure. And I think that that's really logical. I think that on the one hand is a sensible thing to do, but you can take it too far, which is what Ray has done. We get a little bit of time at the event itself. The costumes are great. It's a very formal event. It's a nice change of atmosphere. I wish we'd spend maybe a little bit longer there, but we are there for a short amount of time. And we hear the words, and the winner is, and then it cuts to obviously later that night. And this is very, very well done because we see Debra walking into their bedroom and she says, something good's going to come of this. Obviously, everybody is going to assume that Ray has lost. So when he walks in carrying this giant trophy, this trophy must be about 1 meter in height, maybe just under that, but it's massive. Obviously there he has one, and Debra begins to call him a pessimist, not necessarily in a nasty way, but in a way where she's trying to make him realise that this negative attitude isn't healthy. And actually, I really admired her when she asked him, do you like being this way? Not in a condescending way, but in a way where she genuinely was asking him, are you happy? Always looking on the negative side. And I think that that's really interesting because a lot of people are pessimists. I am somewhat of a pessimist, I will be honest. So for me, there was a lot of relatability in this. And it's interesting to kind of ask yourself, are you happy being a pessimist? Because as we see at the beginning, Ray is a pessimist because he doesn't want to experience that sense of failure. And in a way, he's protecting himself from that negative emotion. But when you're a pessimist, it's all negative. So how can you possibly like being that way? But it's comfort, it's security, it's familiarity. And we get into more of this a little bit later, which I'll talk about in more detail. But things for Ray seem to go up and up. He becomes more successful at work, he gets this promotion, and he's trying to not focus on the negative, such as the added pressure, the increased responsibility, but that's all that he can see because that's what he is used to. And that's his outlook. And it's not possible to change that overnight. I mean, maybe occasionally somebody will be able to go from being a pessimist to even just being a realist and then maybe an optimist. But it's not an instant thing. It is very gradual. But Ray, to his credit, is trying. He goes over to tell his parents. And then we realise two things. Well, we realise one thing as a viewer. Ray realises something else. We realise, as his parents tell him he's boasting, that actually this tendency to not celebrate potential success comes from the way he's been brought up. And I think that that's really telling. I imagine there are a lot of people, I don't think I'm one of them, but maybe I am, I don't know, I've never analysed it, but I think there are people who are perhaps conditioned to be pessimists because they've been brought up either with parents or in a time where celebrating publicly your achievements is not the done thing. And I think it's quite interesting to see that we learn that actually, while Ray has got this history of being a pessimist, maybe it's because he was brought up in a certain way. And then Ray himself realises that the way his parents are behaving to him is the way he's behaved towards Debra. And the attitude that he's had around Debra, he's now experiencing with his parents talking to him that way. And he kind of has this moment of realisation where that's not nice to be around. And it's all well and good being a pessimist, but if you start to become too pessimistic around other people, that can be really difficult to be around. And this is what Ray begins to realise as his parents treat him that way. Unfortunately, despite this new realisation, things kind of go the way he expected, because he goes back home. Debra reveals to him that he received a phone call while he was out from his boss. His boss wants him to go to Alaska to cover an event. It's not going to be a pleasant, comfortable, jolly assignment, and Ray's delighted. And this is the comfort and familiarity that I was talking about before. Ray is actually happy that things have started to go wrong, because not only because it proves he was right, but also because that's what he's used to. And if you don't expect things to go well and things do go wrong, it's that sense of reassurance that actually, yeah, things have turned out the way you expected. There's no surprise. There's nothing that makes you question everything you've believed in. Ray, as a pessimist, believes things will go wrong. And that in itself is a problem. To be happy that things have gone wrong because you're getting what you're used to, that is a problem. But obviously for Ray, he's delighted that his reaction, I know I said it's not the funniest episode, but I did laugh out loud when he was walking into the kitchen and Debra said the kids had broken the VHS player, and Ray practically skipped with joy. And that was very, very funny. And he was just absolutely delighted. And then, of course, we get the statement from Debra where she says, and I quote, "You're not happy unless you're miserable." And I think that that's really true for a lot of people, because it is that comfort and that reassurance. Well, if everything's going wrong, it's business as usual. I don't need to worry about the downfall. And I can relate to this. I imagine a lot of people can relate to this, that when something good happens, you're constantly thinking, well, this isn't possible. Things can't be going well all of the time. There must be a fall after the high. And obviously, in reality, that does happen. We often get a lot of great things and then something bad will happen, because life can't be perfect all of the time. But this negative mindset that we see with Ray, that I can relate to, that I think a lot of people can relate to, is that if things are going well, it must be because we're about to have something bad happening. And it's not a healthy way to look at things. But as we can see with Ray, it's also reassuring and comforting, and it's kind of a safe place to be. So definitely a very, very thought-provoking episode. Not the funniest, but I think if you can relate to it, there will be a lot of things to take away from this episode, as I certainly did, and I'm sure a lot of other people will as well. I don't think it's enough to change any pessimist into an optimist, but it can maybe start those cogs churning to get the thought process going, and I think that in itself is a good thing. So, funny occasionally, but definitely a very fascinating episode, and Recovering Pessimist is one that I definitely think has some good takeaways from it, and is ultimately an enjoyable episode.